Headlines this hour. Memorial services mark a year since Malaysian passenger jet MH17 was brought down over East Ukraine. German Chancellor Angela Merkel comes under fire over her handling of questions from a child refugee. And
there's nothing in the flag that symbolizes slavery. It's ridiculous.
amid the campaign against the US Confederate flag, one southern factory stands against the move. Around the clock across the world, this is RT International. From the team and myself, Ewan O'Neill, welcome to the programme. It's been a year since the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 in eastern Ukraine, which claimed the lives of all 298 people on board. 38 Australians were killed in the crash, and a memorial service has been held in the country's capital, Canberra. Prime Minister Tony Abbott joined over 500 friends and family of the victims.
It probably had to be Russian insurgents.
Is there anything other than social media?
We are not yet ready to take any conclusion.
The plane broke up mid-air with debris falling near the village of Grabova. Locals witnessed the terrifying scenes.
Видел отдельно падающие тела, то есть летели. Сдалека казалось, что это какие-то просто тряпочки, ошметочки. Оказалось, это тела людей. Просто они как-то так падали, как тряпочки.
Потом после этого повыходили люди, увидели, тут мальчик лежал без головы в этой соседи. Но я не вышла, потому что я видела, но я боялась туда подойти. И девочка вот тут лежала, но я видела, как она летела сверху.
И слышу грохот. Я только на ступеньке встала, грохот. А муж после меня выскочил, и она упала, получается. Я только выбежала. Она упала, и муж, он думал, что это, он чуть не побелел. Он думал, что это я.
The plane, bound from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, was carrying people from 10 nations. Commemoration services are set for today in multiple countries, and locals of the village near the crash site are also paying tribute to the victims. RT's Murat Gazdia visited the scene of the tragedy.
Exactly 1 year ago, these fields near the village of Grabova were a vicious battlefield in a civil war that was about to escalate and polarize the world even further. In the skies above us, flight MH17 was shot down. Debris from it, personal effects, and even bodies scattering for kilometers around. In fact, a part of the hull and the wing fell onto this field over here, immediately starting to burn. We had a camera crew here as that happened, but even after a year of cleanup operations, the place is still littered with bits and pieces from MH17, many of them melded together as this piece of aluminium by the heat of the fires. If you look around, you can still find bits and pieces that haven't been burnt up with identification and numbers on them. But even as the wreckage here burned, and before it even had a chance to burn up, the blame game was in full swing.
This looks less like an accident than a crime. The bullying of small countries by big ones and reckless indifference to human life should have no place in our world.
The equipment had to have come from Russia.
We're not calling this a disaster or accident. We're calling this a terrorist act.
And that's tame compared to what the pundits came up with.
What I want to ask you is, Kiev's official position is this is the work of Soviet-backed or Russian-backed rebels, correct? That's Kiev's official position.
Soviet indeed. 2 government bombers had been shot down in the area just days before, which begs the question, why did Ukraine send a passenger jet through an aerial war zone?
А после того, как самолет упал, здесь стало тише с точки зрения военных действий.
Тише, еще сильнее. По грабу вообще начали стрелять. Вон снаряды, тут он в огороде, снаряд. Видать, координаты узнали и начали заметать следы.
The wreckage fell almost onto the front lines in an area controlled by anti-government fighters.
President Putin, in particular, has direct responsibility to compel them to cooperate with the investigation. That is the least that they can do.
Not a word about Kiev shelling the site, though. Fighting in Ukrainian artillery barrages kept emergency services and Western investigators from the area for days.
We can only commit to you that we will not rest until we find out what happened.
Which didn't take long. New anti-Russian sanctions were announced before investigators even got to the crash site.
Including on access to capital markets, defence, dual-use goods and sensitive technologies, including in the energy sector.
As you can see, the ground still hasn't fully recovered from burning MH17 wreckage, but it's really a miracle that nobody else was hurt on the ground, considering how close some of these homes were and the wide area that the wreckage fell in. But the locals have erected over here a little makeshift memorial, probably the best they could do considering it's wartime. Morad Gazdiev, RT, from Grabova in eastern Ukraine.
The area of East Ukraine that the Malaysian flight was passing over was a battle zone at the time of the tragedy.
Ukraine has stepped up its offensive against rebels in eastern Ukraine.
More violence, more bloodshed.
The worst violence, really, that this key population centre in eastern Ukraine has seen.
The victims what looks more and more like a civil war fueled by outside interference.
Well, this made numerous media outlets question why the plane was allowed to fly over East Ukraine when there was sustained fighting on the ground. And that's a key point in the case against Ukrainian officials, launched by several families of the victims. Their lawyer says it was Kiev's duty to close the airspace, as the situation on the ground was out of control.
The Ukrainian government has the responsibility over its airspace. And before that crash, 700 civilian flights crossed the Ukrainian airspace per day. The Ukrainian government, that any government, must actively accept its responsibility. And if they are no longer masters of their territory on the ground because there are rebellions, then they must draw the consequences and close down the airspace. This is what they have not done, and this is exactly where we base our lawsuit on. The pure fact that they just sit back and wait shows that they obviously are not aware about their responsibilities, and this is, of course, a shame.
With commemoration services for flight MH17 set to take place throughout the day, RT will bring you more on the events on air and online.